Welcome everybody to, can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Welcome to Lost Stars. My name's Tony Morrow, and today we're going to be talking about wormholes and gravity wells and a turn update on up to turn 30. So let's play the trailer while I fix some stuff in the back end. See you on the other side. The time of old kings is done. The kings of old who came from the stars to Kronos saw our race as a robust crop to be harvested. Their power and technology set them as gods to those early Klingons that roamed the plains of a once lush world, enslaving our ancestors as labor to harvest the land and warriors to fight their wars. They used their advanced sciences to change the very building blocks of what it is to be a Klingon. Those who stayed on the homeworld were bred as strong and subordinate manual labor. As their machines of industry stripped our planet of its natural wealth, the Klingons they took to the stars were engineered to serve as crew on their mighty warships. A schism formed and two genetic lines were created, both Klingon, but one stronger and more durable, the other smarter and more capable in combat. Over more than 500 years, Klingons spread across the galaxy as crew in the ships of these taskmasters from the stars. Planets were colonized as industrial way stations to service a never-ending war fought by these former gods against an unknown adversary. In the decades before the Great Uprising, something changed. Those who had once seemed like gods transformed into fearful kings, clutching to power in fear. Their interstellar wars wrought casualties. Worlds were burnt to ash, and the confidence with which they once ruled metamorphosized into a timid shadow of a once great glory. Kales, a common laborer, rose from the masses on Kronos to lead a rebellion against these old kings. The robust warriors captured the centers of industry, while Klingons on board ships in orbit mutinied and took control of the picket fleet that guarded the homeworld. The old kings cowered in their orbital stations, isolated from the massive fleets and resources of centuries past. Over the next several years, automated base stations and orbital manufacturing facilities were captured and retooled. Nearly a decade after the liberation of Kronos, the last base station was captured, only to find the desiccated remains of the entities we now refer to as the Old Kings. With the Old Kings now dead, Kales worked to bring Klingons together, dividing the survivors of the liberation into tribal houses that centralized specialist knowledge and skills. Tribal bonds were formed quickly with those Klingons who served in the spacefaring ships of old, now divided and tasked with the burden of understanding the technology, science, and knowledge of the Old Kings. These houses worked diligently to build the capacity for Klingons to defend themselves from enemies old or new. The warriors from Kronos, relying on their knowledge of industry, rebuilt the engines destroyed in the war and began the effort of restoring Kronos to the planet of bounty it had once been. Waning in age, Kales gathered his most loyal advisors and formed a governing council for Kronos. With representatives from all houses, these leaders would serve as the future government of the Klingon people. Taking the last battleship from the picket fleet, Kales and a valiant few took to the stars to seek out other Klingon worlds left isolated in the wake of the Old Kings. He pledged to return at a time of great need, but trusted that his brothers and sisters in arms would lead the Klingon species to honor and glory. This is the story of those Klingons of Kronos, reaching out beyond Kronos Firma to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and civilizations, to submit, conquer, and exploit those too weak to protect themselves. Long live the Klingon Empire. Boom! And we start now. Welcome to the show here on Saturday afternoon, 2:30 my local time. Hopefully it'll be a time that works for you where you are today. Thanks for joining us on the replay. If you're catching us on the replay, Again, my name's Tony, and I'm playing this wonderful game called Federation and Empire with a bunch of friends of mine, and I want you to share in the experience. Today, we're talking about wormholes and wormholes and gravity wells. There is the thumbnail. Tell me what you think. So yeah, that's the thumbnail. Tell me what you think. Hopefully, once all things get sorted out, that'll go up on our various channels, and that will work just well. But wormholes, gravity wells, and a turn update to turn 30. Tomorrow, I'll be coming into you live to talk about or map out the plan for the turns from 30 to 40, and we'll see how that goes. But without further ado, let me get organized on my end here and give you a quick sit rep on where we're at. So the sensors tell us the map looks like so. Let me zoom out ever so slightly so you get a slightly better view. Okay, so you can see here, this is turn 25. The map was returned to me on turn 25. Our last updates took us up to turn 24. As a reminder of how these turn works at this very early stage of the game, what happens is, and let me just turn off the sensor ping. There we go. So as the turns go, what happens at this very early stage, because there's no other players that are currently interacting with each other. And as a reminder, this is a game that's played over effectively email. So what ends up happening is this game, the game called Federation and Empire, which is the base of this game, a war game that we are currently playing in a 4X manner. Explore. I'm trying to remember. Explore. Exploit. So explore space, expand your borders, exploit resources, and exterminate your enemies. Those are the 4 X's. So here we are at this stage of the game. There are no other players that we are interacting with on this map. If this was being played on a board, which is the traditional kind of format for Federation and Empire, you go in turn sequence based on the different players there. I go, you go, much like any other board game you've ever played. In this context, because we're playing it virtually, i.e. Vassal, which is what's populating this map that you can see on the screen right now, this map is populated through a platform or a program called Vassal, which emulates some of the features and the counters and various things that you will find on Federation or in Federation and Empire. And then we do the sort of the economics and the turn management piece on an Excel spreadsheet, which you have seen before if you've joined us in other live streams, that you will see very shortly in the future tomorrow when I come to you tomorrow in the live stream where we talk about turn 30 to 40. So at this early stage, what ends up happening is that we submit, for example, up to 10 turns. And in the progression of turn after turn after turn, things can occur. Events will happen, and we as players will write various kind of notes in our turn, so that if something happens, the individual who is processing each turn will send back the turn to us to say, something happened, want your input on what you want to do next. Does this change your plan? If no, that's fine. If it does change your plan, how does it do that? And so on and so forth. So what happened to bring the turn back after I submitted it for turn 24 to turn 25? Let me show you. So there's a reason why we call this episode Wormholes and Gravity Wells. And that's because, as you can see on this map, there is not one right here, not two, but now 3 wormholes. Well, technically 1 wormhole and 2 gravity wells. And let me show you what I mean. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Let me just electric slide my way over here, and I will scroll. There you go. So here you can see these 3 hexes with the sort of aqua blue diamonds or triangles around them. This is the graphical thing on the map that is indicating a wormhole. So the diamonds that you will see where the D3 is, that is a wormhole. That's indicated because you have a diamond, i.e. a triangle or an arrow, that points both ways, in and out. On the other 2, you will notice that they are kind of like triangles with the pointy end of the triangle pointing in towards the center. Now that is a gravity well, meaning that it's a one-way direction. And can you put in the comments below, what do you think the direction is based on this, these two gravity wells? Do you think they're in the sense that I can travel into it, or are they out, meaning something will come out of it? And while you're thinking about that and typing it in the notes right now, I want to see how many of you think it's one or the other. Let me share you this little piece because I asked this question too. So what happens is there will be an event in the game, in the sense it's a random rolled event, and the event will produce a wormhole. In this case, it's happened 3 times to me. And funny little story about that. When we were playing, we've played various versions of this game. This is, I believe, the 5th iteration of this particular campaign, or this style of campaign. And in the 3rd or 4th, I wanted to introduce something that would allow us as players to interact with each other a little bit more. Because if you can think of it like a conventional map, this map is sort of like a hexagon. And so if you think of it as players being equally spaced out around the sides, then everyone's going to have their sort of pseudo slice of the pie. So everyone's going to have a pizza slice on this giant pizza map, and the person who is on the farthest side of the map will not really be able to interact too much with the person on the other side, the opposite side of the map from them. Or, you know, folks that are substantially different. They'll have immediate neighbors, like, you know, you're living in your house or in your apartment and you have a neighbor to the left of you, to the right of you, depending if you're in an apartment, up and down as well. But regardless, you have those sort of immediate points of contact with your neighbor, but that's it. The wormhole allowed a new dynamic in the game, a new kind of strategic thing to think about, which is that you could have somebody on the other side of the map pop up with a wormhole in your space or in your territory, and that could be a big problem. In this map that you can see here, I've got 3 of them right next to this star here. That's my homeworld. That's where my shipyards are, all my industrial infrastructure. That's the heart and soul of the race I'm playing, which is the Klingons. That's the heart and soul of the Klingon Empire. I don't want people coming close to me in that regard, because when they show up on the other side of that wormhole, they could, you know, attack me or hurt me, or, you know, it makes me very vulnerable. So I asked a question about introducing these wormholes. In the first game that we played, ironically, I got the first wormhole like on turn 3, which was very unexpected, and then that led to a very interesting set of dynamics throughout the game. As you can see in this game, very early on in the game, I now have as many as 3 different wormholes. Now, what's kind of unusual is that, so when a wormhole shows up, there's basically a percentage chance that it will either be a wormhole, i.e. a 2-way, or a 1-way, i.e. gravity well. Now, if it's a wormhole, it doesn't matter because it's a 2-way street, in the sense that I can go through it and I can come back, and you know, that's the way a wormhole works. It's a 2-way transit. But with a gravity well, it's a 1-way transit. So when a gravity well pops up on a map in the event of a random event, what did you say in the comments about which way would it be? Would it be an innie, in the sense that I can travel into it, or is it an outie, in the sense that something is going to come out of it? What did you put? Well, because the other side of the wormhole is undetermined, meaning that until I travel through it, the game master will not populate the other end of the wormhole or roll the dice or the statistical chance of where it's going to pop up on the map. So because if it's a gravity well, we don't know where it ends, we only know where it starts, it's got to be an innie. In that, because it's an innie, someone will travel through it and then it will populate the endpoint of that gravity well. So whenever we see a gravity well at this early stage of the game, a gravity well most likely will always only be an in. The only way that I'll know that it's an out is this. So for example, if I'll just cycle through the map here. So I'll cycle the type. Now you can see that this one down here in Papa 17 is a innie, in the sense that you can go into that gravity well, come out the other side. This, I change the icon on the map in QQ16 or Quebec 16, you will see that that's now pointing out, or the pointy end, the apex of the triangle is pointing out. So that's an outie. So when I see something on the map pop up like this, if I ever do, it will also be with something coming through it, meaning that somebody's tried to travel through an in and they've come out the other side as an out, and that will have shown up on my map. But in the absence of that, it will always be an innie. So that's what it looks like on the map. So that's the event that occurred on this particular turn, which is why I was returned the turn. So as you can see here, this is kind of unusual in the sense that, first of all, to have a wormhole show up on the map at all is a very rare event. The fact that I have 3 in close proximity is very weird. Like, it's just very unusual when it comes to how quickly these things can get rolled, or the chances of these things appearing. To give you a ballpark, in a 120 turn game, which was the last game that we played, which included Wormholes, there were only, I believe, 5 or 6 total Wormholes. Total. Over 120 turns. We're at turn 30, and 3 of them are in really close proximity to my homeworld. That is extremely unusual. Not only unusual that I would have all 3, but that they're so close to my homeworld. Now, obviously, because we're at that early stage in the game, that's why they're so close, but nonetheless, strange. So here we are. We've got 3 of these, and as you can see, I've got this D3, which as a reminder, the Ds in the Klingon lingo or vernacular, Ds are cruisers, or like CAs. Fs are destroyers, or DDs, and Es are like frigates. And in the Klingons, the number that follows it talks or makes reference to its technology. So it's like level of technology. And as a quick recap, in this game, we start off in something very akin to Enterprise. If you're a Star Trek fan, which I assume you are, seeing that you're watching this, Enterprise is sort of the golden age of warp travel, meaning that your species has gotten to the point where it can travel the stars. That's the W era of technology. W. The next stage after that is what they call Y, followed by M, meaning the modern era. And when you think of M, you're thinking of Captain Kirk in the original series. Captain Kirk in the original series and the Enterprise and everything that we can think of when we think of Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, or the more recent J.J. Abrams iteration of that. Very different, obviously. But if we think about it from the original TOS, original series perspective, Star Trek with the really like from the iteration of Captain Pike and then Captain Kirk in the USS Enterprise, that is the M era or the modern era of this game. And then after that, it goes to GW, the General War, which is a reference to the tabletop version of the game. And that's more like you think about it, the movies, the original cast in their movies with the Enterprise and the Excelsior, and then getting to the point where we're starting to approach the next generation. So that's sort of like how that all looks, or how that all maps out as far as when you think of Y or W, Y, M, and GW, these techs, that's what that looks like. For the Klingons here, D3, that's W. D4, which is the next one up, is Y. And then the numbers get a little wonky, but basically it'll be a D5 or D6, and those will be the sort of the M era, and then the D7, the Katinga class cruiser, that comes late M, early GW. So we'll see how that goes. But at this stage of the game, we've got a early era cruiser, so that's a W, as in a D3, and it's got what's called an R&D team. So in this game, we have, let me swap this out. So in the game, there is research and technology, just like any kind of 4X game, whether it's Civilization or the Total War series or whatever. You have a tech tree that you can follow. In this game, we have a tech tree. And the R&D team is something that can add points, add resources, add advantage to you to be able to research certain technologies. In the context of wormholes specifically, you need the R&D team, your science team, to go to the wormhole in a ship, hence the D3 in this example, and do kind of explore the wormhole. So if you think about the series DS9 parked right in front of a wormhole, there were a couple times when they tried to go through or go into and explore that wormhole and kind of map it out. That's kind of a similar process that's happening here, at least in my mind. So what ends up happening is the R&D team parks itself, positions itself on the wormhole, successfully explores it. And what that means is, just like survey ships, which we spoke about in the last live stream, survey ships have a percentage chance to be able to explore a fog of war hex or grayed out hex. So if we go back here and we hear the sensors lighting up, so you can see here on the edge, you've got, and it's a little misleading here because the Klingons are black and gray. But so the resource here with the little white dots that you can see is a gray hex with the white dots in it. But right beside it, you'll see here, and I'll just scroll up so you can see that a little bit better. You'll see here these gray hexes in Lima and Mike 11. Those are fogged out hexes. Those are hexes that have not been explored as opposed to the ones right next to them. And when you put a ship in, such as this large Y-era freighter, this is an exploration freighter, and it has a chance to be able to explore that hex. And it has a dagger team or a prime team in the context of this game that helps it be able to improve its chances to be able to explore that hex. So in the same way that these kind of exploration ships explore unexplored hexes, i.e. the fogged out gray hexes, the R&D team needs to explore the wormhole. Once they've explored it, then it becomes a tech specifically that you can research. And as you research it, you can open up different things. Let me take a moment and share with you the kinds of things you can see. So here you can see on the screen, this is the spreadsheet that we were talking about. And I'm going to just go to the R&D table. So here you have a list of the various technologies. And you can see here listed Y, M, GW. These are the milestones, or you can see the list of the techs in those columns, or in those rows rather, are techs that are required to be able to get to that milestone level of technology. Y, M, or GW respectively. Let me zoom in so it's a little bit easier for you to see. One more. Okay. So here you can see, this is kind of a teaser for turn 30. This is the turn 30 spreadsheet, and you can see that I've discovered Y-Tech. So regardless, though, you can see here that technologies are broken into different categories, such as economy, strategy, weapons, macro systems, microsystems, and auxiliary designs. I'll explain that in another episode, but for today, we're talking about wormholes. You can see wormholes highlighted right here. So wormholes, this technology was grayed out previously, just like you can see these other technologies are grayed out. And that is because you need to get a prerequisite before you can research that technology. In the case of a wormhole, the prerequisite is have an R&D team explore that wormhole, the first one. Once you've done that, then you can apply research R&D points to wormholes specifically. So what does that mean? Let's show you. In the wormhole technology, which is right over here, we'll just scroll over. So in the wormhole technology, the first piece that you find out, and I'll zoom in a little bit more here so you can read it with me here. So the prerequisite is you must successfully explore a gravity or rift or wormhole. And what that means, you can't do it with a crippled ship, a slow unit, which is those convoys, or the exploration freighters. And what that means, what this allows you to do is that you can transit the wormhole a maximum of one ship at a time, but you're going to be crippled on a 1d6 between a 1 and a 6. So between a 1 and a 6, which is obviously all the different numbers that are on a 6-sided die, your ship will get crippled, meaning the transit is so hard on the ship, you will cripple the ship. Now, as you move throughout the tech, it'll change so that once you hit the next milestone, you can transit up to 2 in a battle round, that is. And we'll talk about combat once we get to actual combat. But in this case, the ship will be crippled on a 5 or a 6 on a 1d6, meaning that there's a good chance, 2/3, that you'll be able to transit it without getting crippled. The next one would be you're no longer crippled. You can transit as many as 3. And then the next milestone, and this is the kicker, this is the one that's important, is slow units and convoys may transit a wormhole, meaning that the freighters and the convoys, which move at a slower speed than the rest of the ships you have, they can move a maximum of either 1 or 2, depending on their technology level. They can transit now the wormhole. And what that means is now you can draw supply through the wormhole, meaning that if we go back to the map, boop. All right, let's go to this map. So as you can see here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to highlight the supply. Once my silly brain can see Klingons on this, there we are. Goodness. So it's a little harder to see because, again, Klingons are gray. The other races have different colors, so it's a little easier to see. In this context, you've got gray. And I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. So I currently have supply tech 3, meaning that from any particular supply point, of which a base here for YBS is 1, supply will extend 3 hexes. So in the supply menu, I can set the supply range, which I can see is set for 2 here. So let's set it for 3. Bam. Now you can see that my supply extends to this highlighted, basically, area of territory here, right? So that extends out that far. So if there was a wormhole, as there is here in D3, or on this on the D3 there, and I had a base or a supply point on that, I could extend supply to the other side of the wormhole by as many as 2 or 3 hexes. So usually what the transit from one side of the wormhole to the other is considered 1 or 1 hex, and then you start counting out from there. So essentially, this would allow me 2 hexes of supply from my side of the wormhole to the other side of the wormhole, and then 2 out from there. So that's what that would look like. Let's take that off. All right. So that's essentially wormholes. We've got, as you can see here, this is turn 25, and in turn 25 we have one wormhole and 2 gravity rifts or gravity wells, and they are innies in the sense that I can travel through them. Nothing's going to come out of them, and we'll see where they go. Now, one more thing about gravity wells and wormholes. Just like there is a chance that a gravity well or a wormhole can appear, there is also a chance that a gravity well or a wormhole will change from either a wormhole into a gravity well or a gravity well into a wormhole. So if you think of the DS9 television series, there was a time when the wormhole closed. I mean, there was stuff going on in that story that would, kind of told you why that was happening. But regardless, the idea was that a wormhole isn't static, isn't permanent, isn't going to be there all the time. It's going to change over time. So wormholes can change in this game over time. They can be a wormhole, turn into a gravity well, or they can just disappear altogether. But now that I have gravity wells, those 2 other gravity wells there, it is very likely and possible that they will change. They will turn into a 2-way wormhole. There's a really good chance that could occur. So I need to be thinking about that going forward. And as part of that, let me take you up to turn 30. Boom. All right. So here's the turn 30 map. Do you notice something different? I'll give you a second. One of the gravity wells has disappeared. Kind of strange, right? But this is exactly what I was talking about, in the sense that the gravity wells or the wormholes are not static and they can change. So somehow, some way, ironically, the thing that happened was that the gravity well changed. So there was a gravity well right here in Papa 17 or Papa 17, and it disappeared. which I was not expecting. So it disappeared, and because it disappeared, there's nothing there anymore, but I still have this one here. And I sent a ship through there. Where did it go? See that? Right there. That's the Audi, and I sent an E1, so I sent a frigate through there. And let's just scroll over here. So it showed up in this hex right here. Bang. Now there's nobody around me. Just as a quick reminder or recap, a ship like this ship has a sort of a sensor range of 1, meaning that it can see something within 1 hex of it. Now, if in the case of a fog of war, like for example, it's popped up in a fogged area, area that it doesn't have survey data on, it doesn't have it mapped out, it just is like in the middle of the forest effectively, or in this case, the middle of space. It can sense if there is, using its sensors, right? It can sense whether there is a ship or a base or something nearby. It will be able to tell not necessarily who it is. It will be able to tell roughly what size it is and, what it could be. And then if I detect something, I can move towards it. Now, when it comes to bases and survey ships, they have a visibility of 2 hexes. Basically, they can see 2 hexes out. So if this was a survey ship, it could see as far as 2 hexes, but it's not, so it can only see 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, from this point, do like a little search pattern to be able to find or try and bump into somebody in that area. And if I do, booyah. And if I don't, I don't. The advantage of this is that I can now explore the area around that that terminus for the gravity well, that Audi. I can explore the Audi, and I can find somebody. Now, if I can find somebody, the advantage is at this early stage, I don't know who my other players are. Right? I don't know where they are. I don't know how big or how small they are. I don't even know what race. I have an idea of what races they are, but I don't know where they are. So once I can start bumping into them, then I can figure out where they are on the map, and that gives me a better sense of knowing where my neighbors are. So where and when I might bump into them. Also in this game, and like many games I'm sure you've played, you may have an idea already about a certain player. I.e., for example, let's just pick some random names. Sarah and Sam. Sam is a sweetheart. He just is the nicest guy. He doesn't like to fight. He just likes to, do a lot of trade, set his borders. He's the nicest guy in the world. He is a great ally. He is a guy that you want to share a fence with or share a border with because he will not stir the pot. Samantha, on the other hand, she is vicious. She will get in there. She will stab you in the back. She will do things to you. Why? Who knows? That's just the way she plays. And so because she's aggressive, and you know that she, Samantha that is, as a player is aggressive, it's kind of important and advantageous for you to know where she is. On the other hand, you also know that there's this other player, a new player in your game. Let's call him or her, well, we'll call them player X, not knowing whether it's a he or her. Because in this game, like I say, we play online, so I actually personally know all the other players I'm playing with, but perhaps you don't. So if you don't know who they are, guy or girl, and you don't know their attitude, whether they're aggressive or not, you have no idea how they're going to play. So it's good to know who's who in the zoo, where are they, and how can they, or how can they not, kind of reach out and touch you, hurt you, or do other things. How can they mess up your plans? So anyways, that's the kind of my mentality when I'm sending out these ships into this kind of into the great wide yonder, because I'm trying to find and bump into some of these other players to figure out where they are and what they're doing. But let's return to our map really quickly here, and I'm going to give you the macro view. So here we go. So here you can see this is the map. So all the way to the bottom. And then I will scroll. Actually, you know what? I'm going to zoom out the entire way. So that's my max zoom out. You can see it's kind of like a hexagon here, as in like, flat on the sides, diamond on the top. So it's essentially a hexagon. Or I guess no, hexagon is technically, no, that's a hexagon, yeah. So a hexagon. And as you can see, my footprint in this is kind of in the top right corner, right? You can see there's that wormhole that we found before, and then we've got our little, we'll call him bottle, as in message in a bottle, and he's over in the corner here. And then this is the guy we just sent through. So we're going to try and sort out if there's anybody in this neighborhood over here, and then we can start looking into other places. So that's what the map looks like as of right now. Let's zoom in, and I can show you. Woo! And I can show you what we're doing on our kind of scale the map here. So, as you can see, slowly expanding, slowly going out. And the biggest things right now are these two, now two, as opposed to three, these two wormholes, or one wormhole, one gravity well. So trying to use them as best I can. And let me just remove the ships from the map, and you can see, as I scroll down here, just want to make sure that you can see the best view, so to speak. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so you can see here that we have a base network. So the base network's important for two reasons. One, because it's the supply point being the thing that kind of allows your ships to be able to, get the food and the fuel and everything they need to be able to do what they need to do. My current supply is 3, and I can reach out to 3 hexes beyond one of these things. But remember I told you that survey ships and bases have a 2 hex range of visibility. They can see 2 hexes out. So one of the things that happens in the game when a fight starts, or when conflict occurs, is what they call a reaction range, meaning that a ship on its own can move 1 hex. Basically, if it sees something happening, something bad happening, in an adjacent hex or a hex right next to it, it can move into that hex to be able to support or back up, for example, something else getting attacked. If you have 2 ships beside each other and one ship gets attacked by something, the other ship, if it's close, and you've written this into your contingencies, moves into that other hex to be able to support it, right? In the context of a base, or any of the ships that you will see with this icon of this little diamond in the corner. So see how there's that little diamond there? You can see it here as well, this little diamond. That little diamond indicates basically what they call special sensors, and it allows you extended reaction range. Effectively, that means you can go out 2 hexes, but it doesn't happen in a snap. For example, you can be 2 hexes, or let's say you're 3 hexes away from something. That thing comes 1 hex towards you. It's now within the 2 hex visibility range that you have. If you're a ship, not a base, obviously, bases can't move, but if you're a ship, you can move out 1 to engage it or try and go meet it. So this is a you move, I move, you move, I move scenario. So let's say you are the other player. You come within 2 hexes of me. I can move 1 hex out to meet you, and then you have, this is occurring when you can move then. So if you move in a direction that is basically parallel or towards me, so for example, in a hex, for example, you'll move directly into me, we'll meet each other. Or if you move to the side, I can move towards you and then engage you at that 2 hex range. Or if you move away from me, and this is the caveat, if you move away from me, or you are increasing the distance between my unit, my ship, and you, I can't follow you. So as long as you're moving closer to me, or you're not increasing the distance from me, I can move towards you. But if you start moving away from me, I can't react to you. Now, why is that important? In the very first game that we played, I was playing against one of the other players in a war. And I didn't know this rule existed. I had placed a massive fleet of ships on this one spot that was smack dab in the middle of a bunch of other bases, one of which was my capital. So the ships weren't on the capital, they were 2 hexes away from it on this one base. And the base was in a spot where it could react to anything that happened. Now, what I didn't write in my orders was that those ships would move to react to attack anything, rather than they would move to support the capital. So it was the way I kind of wrote it. So what ended up happening is the other player moved toward me and then moved away from me. And by doing this, it was just the positioning of how he was. By doing this maneuver whereby he moved towards me and my ships were not going to react unless it was to a base, right? I was only moving to be able to support the base. So he moved within 1 hex of me. I didn't move to engage him. He moved beside me 1 more hex. I did not move to engage him. And then he moved away from me, opening the distance between us to my homeworld, the homeworld with my shipyards, the homeworld with all my money, with the homeworld with everything I got, all my valuables. He moved to my homeworld and tanked it. He just decimated it. And I could not move the ships to defend it just because of the way I wrote it. In that very first game, that was one of the most crippling things that ever happened. Luckily, I somehow survived that, at least for until the very end of the game. And I was able to fight back. That was a brutal lesson to learn in the game, and now I'll never make that mistake again. So what ends up happening here is I'm making sure that the bases are 2 hexes apart so that they can support each other should something happen. And of course, like I said, based on my example, if bad guys get close to me, I'm going to write my contingencies, and I will share that with you in the live stream when we do that. I'll share with you how I write my contingencies to be able to explain to the game master, because it's a person, explain to them if this then that kind of scenario. If this happens, then that. And at that time, I'll explain to you how that all works. But take it in that it's important to write these kind of rules in. So that's, as you can see here on the map, I've got them all to basically 2 hexes away from my homeworld, and I'm currently building them. This is just based on proximity. I'm building them to the south here. So I've just based on where my convoys were. So the convoys are what I'm using right now to be able to build. There's basically two types of ships that can build stuff. The first is the convoy, and the second is a tug. So in this game, I do not yet have a tug. The date of introduction of different ships. So at different times in the timeline, ships are supposed to be introduced. Or let's say technology becomes available and those ships get introduced. I'll show that to you in a moment here, but basically when those ships get introduced, there's a date associated with it, and then that ship will become available. I don't currently have a tug available, so all I can do is build them with convoys. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm building them with convoys, as you can see here. So I've built them to the south, and I'm building this one over here. Now, let me introduce the ships again, and I'll share with you a little trick I learned. So this is the first time I'm playing the Klingons. The Klingons, as a perk, get this. You'll notice there's this ship here, right here in the corner. It's called an E1T. It's called like a transport. Think of it like a mini tug. 3 of them can effectively get together and do something that's very similar to a tug. But what they can do is they can act as a temporary supply point. And you can, during your movement phase, do what's called a strategic move or strategic movement to a supply point. So what ends up happening is convoys, the way strategic movement works with convoys is effectively like this. Convoys are a bunch of civilian ships that get together to be able to work on something or go in a direction, right? That's what a convoy is in this context. So the Y convoy, there's military convoys and economic convoys and various other things. In this context, for a Y convoy, when you see that icon on the map, it's basically, think of Battlestar Galactica and that herd of ships, a bunch of civilian ships just getting together, trying to make stuff happen. So that collection of convoys and civilian ships is building, in this case, the YBS. What ends up happening for strat movement is, whereas a normal ship like the D3 currently can move 1.5 or 1.5 times its normal distance, it can move 3 hexes at a time, meaning it can move, round it down or round it up, depending, about 5 hexes. So it can move 1, 2, 3, and then 2 more. So it'll move up to 5 hexes in a strategic movement. Convoys, what they do is we disperse the convoy. So like we get rid of the counter and then we reconvene a convoy in another location, because essentially they're all just civilian ships. So it's not that you're moving a specific ship from one spot to another. Rather, you're just spending the resources to bring a bunch of civilians together to work on this thing. So what ends up happening is I can disperse the convoy when it's finished building this base here in Tango 16, Tango 16. And then I can reconvene the convoy. For example, I've got a, come on, work, there we go. I got an E1T there, and I've got an E1T here. So what ended up happening is I finished building a base, and then I strap moved the convoy to where I had the E1T as a temporary supply point. Does that make sense? So basically, they become a temporary supply point. I can strategically move resources, or rather a ship, from one strategic point, which is a base, to another, which is the temporary one, which is the E1T. And because it's a convoy, the convoy basically dissolves and then reconvenes or is reestablished in another location. That's effectively how we do strategic movement when it comes to convoys in this game. So as soon as the base is finished, it can disappear and then reconvene on an E1T. And that's basically what happens. And I didn't know this trick until I spoke to another player who played the Klingons in the last game, and he explained this little trick to me, and I was like, huh, that's impressive. I didn't know you could do that. And because of this early stage in the game, many of the other players don't have tugs as well. Because we have to only use convoys, it really limits our ability to move, because convoys only move one hex at a time, whereas the other ships can move 3 or more, depending on the tech. W ships move 3, Y ships typically move 4, M ships can move 6, that kind of thing. So Y convoy ships move 1 hex at a time. That would take a longer time to get up there, whereas I can strategically just make them disappear and then reappear in another location, which is really, really good. So today, what have we talked about? Let's bring you back to center. So in today's episode, we've talked about wormholes and gravity wells. Wormholes, two-way transits from point A to point B, anywhere in the map. That has shown up, as you saw, on very early stages of the game, showed up on my map, and that's what I have, that cruiser on the wormhole, and I've explored the wormhole, and I'm currently researching wormhole tech. Because the faster I can get that technology, the faster I can transit them safely, and the faster I can get supply through those wormholes, which means I can effectively use it like a pocket door to go through from my neck of the woods to somewhere else. Great, right? We've talked about how wormholes and gravity wells are different, how they can change over time, and we've gone over the iconography, or like the pictures on the map that show gravity wells versus wormholes. Wormholes being the diamonds that go both ways, and the gravity wells being the triangles that point either in for an innie or out for an outie, meaning the point where you can enter the wormhole and the point where you come out of the wormhole. And you saw that today. And lastly, we've also talked about the strategic movement trick that I was talking about as I was dissolving convoys in one location, reconstituting them in another location, and how that really allows me to be able to pop them around the map really quickly to be able to build this base network, which allows me to explore and expand faster and faster. So, really appreciate you joining us for the live stream. If you are interested in playing this game, then please do not hesitate to write in the comments below. Write in the comments below and let us know, what is your favorite race in Star Trek? Out of all the races that you've seen on any television series, or whether it's the original series, the animated series, TNG, DS9, Voyager, whatever it is, tell me what your favorite race is. And is that something you would want to play in this game? Keep in mind, this game is all the original series and technically the animated series, but it's kind of the original series intellectual property. So they don't have the Cardassians and some of the Bajorans and the Dominion. They don't have some of those other races from other kind of aspects of the IP for Star Trek. It's all the original Kirk stuff, as in the Gorn, the Klingons without the bumpy foreheads, the Romulans, and a bunch of other races around them. Have you ever heard of Federation and Empire before? And if not, are you willing to learn or want to learn the game? If you do, then you can feel free to join us at Patreon, patreon.com/LostStars. You can find us on Patreon, and there you can sign up to be able to not only support us, to be able to create more content here for you, more bells, more whistles, more things like that, but you can also participate in the game. You can become... you can have one of the ships named after you on the map. You can take control of as much as 3 ships in a task group and move around the map and stir up trouble. If you want, you can even sign on as a fleet commander and command your own fleet, or even once we get more developed in the game and we have enough room, you can become and sign up to become a governor and control an area inside the Klingon Empire, and you can control the economy, the defensing, or you can build the defenses and control ships within that space. That's all up to you. Just go to patreon.com/LostStars, and you can sign up there to be able to support us. Not only you can participate in playing the game, but you can support us to be able to create more content and more stuff around this to be able to help you have fun in this game as well. So really great having you all here today. Looking forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Feel free to type in your favorite race, what you'd want to play, and have you ever heard about Federation and Empire before? If not, like I say, love to hear about it, and give us some ideas about what you want to hear about in this game next. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And what kind of rules do you want to learn about in this game? That is all for now. Thank you, everybody. My name's Tony, and it's been a pleasure. Bye for now.